coronavirus, virtual assisting, and making the most of the next 2 weeks. You are tuned into the Teacher Says Podcast. Welcome. You are tuned into the Teacher Says Podcast, and I'm Cess. It's great to be back live on the air, pre-recorded at this point. If you have not done so already, press the pause button, and I want you to go subscribe, rate the podcast so we can be found more easily in iTunes. That would be absolutely wonderful. So once again, make sure you like, rate, subscribe, and review, of course. 5 stars would be preferable. At any rate, it's so great to be back. I'm happy to be here. I'm in my basement studio. It's kind of chilly, but it's good. I've had a very unexpected surprise. I am a government worker, I guess you could say, public school worker. And I have at least the next 2 weeks off. So I'm excited in the sense that it gives me plenty of opportunity to catch up and record some episodes. Not excited about the unknown. By now, the intent is to release this episode next 24 hours. So the coronavirus is what's on everyone's mind. Not fearful about the coronavirus. I'm one of those people that falls under the guise of what happens is going to happen. But I'm more like concerned about the financial aspect of this. What happens, it's my understanding that I will be paid at least for the next 2 weeks. But I'm very concerned for those who aren't. In addition, everything is shut down. No malls, no gym, no etc. Which, I understand why. I'm not mad, of course. But I'm like, what about those people concerned? In addition to, I'm setting goals for myself. Hopefully, you hustlers out there are setting goals for you as well. In the next 2 weeks, I said, I'm going to make $1,000. Yeah, I don't really know how yet. I have some ideas. I'm going to sit down, meditate, goal set, and come up with a way to have it happen. But for now, it sounds good saying it. So I'll just repeat it to myself, and hopefully it'll come into fruition on top of everything else that's going on in my life, that as well. But moving forward, we have an awesome show for you today. I'm so excited to have a guest. I love having guests. We are going to be graced with the presence of Tameka Bazile, who is a phenomenal virtual assistant influencer. You can find her page on Instagram. We'll get more into it when we talk. But for now, I'm gonna, like I mentioned that before, this episode, and even though the interview was recorded a while ago, a week ago, I should say. It really is current because we're in a situation right now where the unknown is there. And I'm like, well, how are we going to make some money during this time? And, fortunately, some people have it figured out. Like I said before, if you have multiple side hustles, if you're a serial entrepreneur, money's still coming in. I've done some investing and I made the mistake of looking on, I think it was Friday, where the stock market plunged the greatest it has plunged since 1987 when they had Black Monday. So it was kind of disconcerting to see all my money falling. But that's the way it goes. And then this morning, as I was listening to my NPR, I see that, it's down to 0. Oh my goodness. I draw a blank at times. That's the mind of the busy ones. But your APR, annual percentage rates, down to almost 0 for short lending, short term, something like that. So I was like, because right now I'm in a situation where I'm trying to get a HELOC on my home to do a couple repairs. So like I said, I guess the good comes with the bad in regards to all of this that's going on. But if you're thinking about being a virtual assistant, what is a virtual assistant before I go on a tangent? A virtual assistant is a person who does just what it sounds like. You work virtually. You're working online for another individual. And in the age of social media, that often looks like posting on Instagram, posting on Twitter, setting up Facebook ads. You are the voice of a brand. You are the voice of a company, and you're getting paid to do that. In the past, I've actually had a virtual assistant I outsourced a few years ago, and based out of the Philippines, and it was cool. I keep it no secret. I'm very transparent. It was good for about 2 years, and then all of a sudden my expenses just went like through the roof. I bought a new car, and that took away a lot of the money that I was using to finance my my entrepreneurial endeavors. So with that, unfortunately, I had to go independent, and that kind of explains the reason why Teacher Says, the brand, takes so long for everything to happen. It takes a long time because I work full time. I've mentioned, I don't even have to go down the list of why it takes me forever to get all this done. But, like I said, I'm looking at this next 2 weeks as a blessing because it was unexpected. I have tons of things to do. So even today's day one, I was setting goals and thinking about, I'm homeschooling my kids for the next 2 weeks, which honestly I'm not overly concerned about. I just know they're not going to like it. They want to go to class. They want to go to school. They don't want to learn from me. I'm not a teacher. I'm mom to them. So, excuse me. And then that's another thing. I was slandered last week and accused of having corona, which I don't have. I got the flu. Well, I don't know what it was. It was like a bad cold last weekend. 2 weekends ago, I should say. And to make a long story short, I was super sick Sunday, like aches, pains, the whole nine. But I've definitely gotten increasingly better. And at this point, I feel fine. I'm just slightly congested, and even my congestion has gotten a lot better for those who care. Thank you. So back to what I was saying in regards to, just the situation that's going on with the corona, and it's kind of disheartening to me. Well, I won't even say disheartening because people are people. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm just going to binge watch Netflix. I'm like, and I'm like, okay, because I don't know, I'm not putting judgment on anyone, but that's to me like, all the other things that you could be doing, but you know what they say, everybody's their own individual. You can't have everybody think like you. I watch very little Netflix. When I do, it's usually something nerdy. Like last night I was watching a documentary on Jean Michael Baptiste. He's an artist out of New York. I didn't get to watch the whole thing because I was getting a little sleepy. I tend to just watch one show a day, and then when all else fails, it's time for old episodes of Sanford and Son. That's funny saying that, but that's my go-to, like, just to have noise on. Old episodes of Sanford and Son, which is a show from the 70s. If you don't know what Sanford and Son is, it's hilarious to me. I still laugh to this day in watching it. But going back to what I was mentioning before, and then on top of that, I was excited about this weekend that just passed that once again did not come into fruition. I was going to give a shout out to the Earn Your Leisure podcast because I actually paid and was excited about the prospect of going up to Philadelphia to participate in their workshop and a taping of their podcast. And understandably, in fact, I even hit them up on Instagram, like, are you guys still having your Philly Takeover weekend? And they were like, no. So that was canceled, before all this corona stuff popped into our knowns, our mentions, what have you. I was excited. Like, I don't go anywhere. So the prospect of driving up to Philadelphia, which is like 2 hours north of here, I'm like, hey, it's doing something. Learning, give it a shot. If you have not listened to Earn Your Leisure, listen right now. I was very inspired by one of the episodes where they talked about, investing in, what do you call those? Vending machines. Like I said, I'm drawing a blank, and I should not be drawing a blank this early. But vending machines. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And I was excited to learn about that and possibly even save up to do those investings. And, it's been rescheduled for September, so I'll be there in September. And additionally to that, when I was thinking about Earn Your Leisure and investing and so on and so forth, it had me thinking about, the next 2 weeks about managing your time and, Facebook, exercising, because that's another thing. They're saying not to go to the gym, which I'm like, man, I'm finally losing a little bit of weight. I'm excited, and not to go to the gym. Great. And then naughty me, I went to the grocery store. Let me quickly tell you my grocery store journey on Saturday. So Saturday, I was like, we had a decent amount of groceries, but something, all this paranoia had me feeling paranoid. So I'm like, let me go to the grocery store. And I'm an early bird. So I get up at 5:50, get out the house at 6:10, go to Costco's gas station, which, news alert, Costco's gas station is open at 6 a.m. on Saturdays. Was not aware of that. Went right in and out to get gas at Costco, no line. There were only like 4 other cars there, period. So I was like, okay, that's a win. So then after that, I was just going to sit and wait for 2 hours for Aldi's to open up. But then I'm like, let me go check out Wegmans. Now, if you don't have Wegmans, this is a phenomenal grocery store based out of upstate New York. And I was like, yeah, 6 a.m. I'm sure there'll only be a few people there. Let me go check it out. Now, mind you, Wegmans is mega popular, and there's only like a few in the state of Maryland. So go to Wegmans. It looked like the Armageddon hit. There was nothing. And when I say nothing, no produce, no fruits, no, even the expensive cheese that I don't even know who eats that was gone. No olives, which I don't like olives anyway, gone. Meat, gone. Bread, gone. Like nothing, cleared out, wiped out, Armageddon. I'm like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. And I live in Maryland where we have snowstorms, we have blizzards every couple of years we'll have a major blizzard. Never have I seen it wiped out like that, ever. And Wegmans is a very, very popular grocery store, by the way. So I was like, okay, next. So then I decided, and here's me being naughty, and I was only going to go in to check it out. But they opened a brand new Planet Fitness right by Megan's Wegmans. So I'm like, okay, I'll go check it out. So I go in there strictly to go check it out, meaning to see what it looks like and then walk out. There were only 5 people there. Like, no joke, 5. And I'm like, oh, well, let me go get a quick workout in. Because, I was doing social distancing before social distancing was a thing. So I was working out way on the other side of the gym where nobody was. Everything's brand new. Still wiped it down, washed it down, what have you. Did a 30-minute workout. Great. I'm not going back. So, if you're judging me, hey, I only did it once. And then after that, I waited in my car, drove to the Aldi's grocery store, waited in my car till 7:50 when people started lining up. Yes, lining up. If you want to see it. Actually, no, you can't see it. I was going to say I had it on my Instagram stories, but I realize now that went away because it was on Saturday. But the point is, I went to Aldi's, lined up, never had to line up a day in my life for a grocery store. The only time I've ever lined up for anything like that, of that magnitude, was when I was 26, 27, and I lived in LA. I decided to do the one time I ever decided to participate in Black Friday shenanigans. And I went to Walmart in Gardena, California, lined up probably got there about 2 a.m. and waited for the doors to open. But at least this time it was a good reason. It wasn't as long. So 7:50, I'm in line at Aldi's, and people were lined up behind me. So when the doors opened, I made a mad dash. Oh, I won't say mad dash. I'm civil. I walked to what I needed. They were really, I would say they were about 80% stocked. Like, they had toilet paper, they had paper towels, which I didn't need, didn't buy, I already had that. Their produce, fruits, they were fully stocked. Meat, fully stocked. The only areas where they were not fully stocked that I could see was deli meat, I would say 50%, and the other, frozen vegetables. No frozen vegetables. That was the only area that was really lacking. So the lines were long, but at this point you understand why, so nobody's upset or anything. And I was out. I got there at 8 when the doors opened. I was out by 8:22. I got everything I needed. I already have frozen vegetables from last week. And it's a little kind of annoying when you normally shop on the weekend to have to deal with all this, because I am a Saturday, Sunday shopper when it comes to groceries, always early in the morning. I've learned Saturday nights aren't too bad, so sometimes I'll go Saturday evening. Sometimes, if I don't do Saturday evening, I will always do Sunday morning. So it's who are all these extra people? I'm not used to you all. Why are you here? I mean, not that, because of course I do know why they're there. But that was my grocery story. So when we get back from the break, we are going to have the phenomenal guest, Miss Tameka Bazile, and she's going to tell you all about her virtual assistant work and being an influencer on Instagram. So you got to stick around. So coming to the Teacher Says podcast, I'm super excited to have a phenomenon when it comes to virtual assistants and Instagram. If you haven't checked out her page, it's a must do. So I'm going to introduce my guest, Miss Tameka Bazile. So Tameka, I'm so excited to have you on the Teacher Says podcast. We kind of have a history. in regards
Yeah.
to we've known, well, not known, but I guess virtually known each other through Facebook
Yep.
for a little while because you, like me, got started online teaching. So, can you give us a little background? Like, how did you get started with online teaching, and how was that experience for you?
Yeah, I actually had just graduated from grad school and I had like student loan debt and like consumer debt and I was just like, whew. So I got, my first big girl, real full-time job, and I still wasn't making enough for me to like cover my bills, but
Mm-hmm.
also just be able to live a somewhat comfortable life. I didn't want to live paycheck to paycheck. So I started looking into different things that I can do remotely. And I think I ran into VIP Kid and honestly in a Facebook ad.
Oh.
It was very random. I think I commented on one of the Facebook ads that they ran.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I connected with Angela, teacher Angela, who was
Yes.
actually my mentor through the process.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, like VIP Kid was actually a very sudden but nice surprise.
Yeah. So, how long would you say you were regularly working with VIP Kid?
I would say a little bit over a year and a half, just under 2 years.
Okay. And I know like I mentioned before with VIP Kid, it's one of those things that it seems it's very exciting, at least for me. It was exciting at first, and after a while, I was kind of like, I don't know if you ended up having the same situation I did, but it was kind of like you weren't getting as many students
Mm,
and it was such a wave. There was not really, at least with me, a lot of consistency. Like I would get a lot of students at one
yeah.
time, it would kind of dry up, and then there's Chinese New Year.
Oh,
So
yes.
when did it get to the point for you where you were realizing like this might not be the road
Yeah.
I want to travel? Let me look into something else.
Yeah, so it's funny because the time that I was doing VIP Kid, that was also pretty much the time where like my boyfriend and I just moved in together for like the first year. So there was like a lot of adjustment happening. But I actually didn't really experience a decrease in bookings. Like I honestly, and since I don't work for the company, I can say this openly. Like I feel like I really just ghosted my students a little bit because I swear it was just one day you kind of wake up and you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Was actually full time work. I was doing my full time work in higher education, and I was serving on a duty rotation that required me to answer emergencies on campus overnight. And that coupled with being in the office during the day and starting VIP Kid sometimes at like 4 a.m. and working until 8, then going to work from 9 to 5, and then being on duty overnight. It was just it became too much. And I feel like at one point I really just kind of really detached from teaching.
Hmm.
I did continue mentoring other teachers for a little while. I would say about like the last 6 months of my contract.
Okay.
I was just helping onboard other teachers, but eventually I fell off with that as well.
Yeah, I can definitely
Yeah.
understand what the grind you're describing because I remember at one point when I was getting quite a few students, it was like I would wake up in the middle of the night like, did I miss a class? And that's not healthy.
Oh,
When
yes.
you're
That
getting
is
to that point.
PTSD, girl.
Yeah, where it gets to be too much. And, like I said before, I was very, very much part time with it. But when I got to the point where I was starting to get quite a few students, it became slightly overwhelming
Yeah.
with all the other things you have going on.
Oh,
So that
yes.
kind of leads to my next question, which is how did you discover the world of being a virtual assistant? Like, how did that come to to your knowledge? Like, tell me about that journey.
Yeah, it's funny because it wouldn't have existed without VIP Kid.
Hmm.
So once I realized that VIP Kid was pretty much taking too much out of me, I started to research some other options. And this is around the same time that I was actually starting to search for a new job,
Hmm.
like a new full-time job. And I knew that ultimately my goal with both of these was to be able to scale back on the amount of just hours I was putting in for money. Um, so after getting a new full time job, um, I then ended up looking into the world of being a VA because it allowed me to apply what I did in my full time work to working
Hmm.
online. And VIP Kid actually really opened doors for me in terms of remote work. Because like, at a certain point in your life, you are one of those people that like, you don't see a different way until one day you do see a different way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the VIP Kid really introduced to me like how remote work could be. But ultimately I ended up wanting to do something where it was my own. And I wasn't answering to anybody and I wasn't doing it up to anybody's expectations. Like I could create my own expectations and still make
Mhm.
a good amount of money. And it was really, I just kind of launched from there. I remember my first post as a virtual assistant. I was on vacation with my boyfriend and we were in Disney World. And I remember being super excited to be in Disney World and just inspired. So I just posted, and that was my first ever post to Instagram, like ever.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah.
So let me
And then it
ask
just
you,
kind of went from there.
when you mentioned about your post on Instagram, kind of made me think, do you do everything with one business account, or do you set up a personal account and then the account that's for business? Like, how do you suggest for, like an entrepreneur, should they do everything on just one account, or do you think it's important that they have a personal account and a business account?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the entrepreneur specifically. I actually do still have a personal account. I would not be able to tell you when the last time was that I logged into it.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure at some point I even changed the bio of that personal account to say like active on this account. Um, so yeah, it did become really a part of my like everyday life. I think that because a majority of my business is on Instagram now, I've just learned to separate how I use my different social media outlets and
Mhm.
platforms. But Instagram is really now like my business account is where everything really happens. So yeah, I think that like depending on what that entrepreneur would want, there are benefits and there are pros and cons to both sides. So if you keep your personal account, you might risk annoying your current following who knows you as friends and like things of that nature with consistent business posts.
Mhm.
Um, but that can also work to your advantage as well because your friends and family are usually your first supporters with anything that you're going to do. So if anybody's going to launch and help give you a voice, it would be the people who know you personally.
Mhm.
So there's certainly pros and cons to doing either one. And I think it depends on the entrepreneur to decide that.
That is awesome. And also, you had me thinking as well when you mentioned about starting in the world of being a virtual assistant. Like, who do you look for mentorship, or, because I know oftentimes you can get intimidated. Like, how do I be a virtual assistant? And you see all these
Yeah.
different programs. Everyone has a class, a workshop. Like, how do you differentiate between the people who really know what they're doing versus the people who are just trying to sell you something?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a really, really good question. I think for me, I remember Stacy, who was also she's one of the mods for the VIP Kid Teachers of Color page.
Oh, Stacy Stiletto.
And
Yes. Shout
yes,
out. She's been
and
a guest on the show.
yeah, I
Yeah.
actually heard her episode.
Mhm.
And like she was really dope in how she approached entrepreneurship. And I think that I looked to her a lot as well, to
Mhm.
kind of get an idea as to um, how far can I really take this? Like, how far am I willing to go? And she was just so open about her experience that it made it easy,
Mhm.
especially as a woman of color, to just kind of dive in. So shout out to her. But yes.
Definitely.
Um, I think
Yeah.
ultimately, like, it was me just deciding like, okay, like it's kind of all or nothing. Like, what do you really have to lose kind of thing? Um, and then just kind of running with it from
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that is a hang up for a lot of people who want to get started on different aspects of entrepreneurship. It's like, well, you have people who are trying to sell you courses and whatnot, and
Oh
we're
yeah.
talking about thousands of dollars and stuff. And it's like, that's quite an investment for something that you're not even, you're just
Oh
putting your foot
yes.
in the door. So it's like, who should I give my money to? Should I give my money to anyone else? Or,
Oh
should I
yeah.
go the YouTube route, which is free? So, it's definitely important to gain some background and knowledge on
Yeah.
people before they start because they want to charge you quite a bit of money to
Oh yeah.
get
And I do
started.
think that. a big indicator for that is like you can usually tell how, I guess, deep somebody's online presence goes. I always tell people that like you can really find out a lot from a simple like Google search. Like 5 minutes of a little FBI work can really tell you a lot about somebody's brand or
Mm-hmm.
mission, and whether or not they are reputable.
Mm-hmm.
I always say as well, like a lot of likes on Instagram doesn't necessarily mean that that person is reputable or the best person to go to as well. So you kind of want to do vet who you look at. And you want to look at how many different online web presences do they have? Is it consistent? Am I looking at a uniform brand? Is this person giving value first and showing that they know what they're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
A big way that I use my Instagram page is showing people that like there is free value on there because I'm pretty much telling them what to do and what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can pretty much implement what I tell them for free and learn from it and grow their presence. And I think that that's one of the biggest indicators as to whether or not you can trust somebody.
Yeah.
Is it like, all right, like I'm asking for money right off the bat?
Like, hi, give me your money, and you don't even know who
Yeah,
they are yet.
exactly. Or have I like led you to water in a sense. I think
Yeah.
that most of the like the best of the best, especially on Instagram and online, they usually have some sort of path that they take you on, or they work with you in some way, or cultivate you in some way before there's even a financial investment.
Yeah. So walk me through for someone who might not be familiar exactly what a virtual assistant does. Like
Mhm.
what are some of the tasks that you do, or what are some of the tasks that most virtual assistants do, or is it really different according to the type of job you're doing? Like a real estate virtual assistant might look different from a someone
Yeah,
who works in research. Like explain what that looks like for us.
yeah. So I've since transitioned from being a virtual assistant, but
Mm-hmm.
since like doing so, when I did start being a virtual assistant, because my full-time work is in higher education, I focused heavily on like the online education sector,
Mm-hmm.
creating courses, ebooks and things of that nature. So a lot of my clientele did come from that, people who are actually trying to monetize their um, education on a specific subject and pretty much build trust and loyalty with their brand by offering that to their clients or to their audience themselves. So that's really where I started out, just kind of in the background of everybody else's business. Um, I wrote and like ghost wrote a lot of ebooks. I helped
Mm-hmm.
create courses for trainings and things of that nature. So that was pretty much my niche. And other virtual assistants do have their own niches, such as real estate, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
There are some virtual assistants that offer administrative support, like an administrative assistant that you would have in an office.
Yeah.
And the niches are important because I think that that allows the virtual assistant to get really popular in a small sector,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of being a big fish in a small pond instead of being a small fish in a big pond, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump into your Instagram, page and all you do on Instagram because, like I mentioned in
Yeah,
the beginning, it's beautiful. So
thank
let's
you.
go on a journey as a follower. Like, tell me as a follower, what are you showing your followers on Instagram, and what value are you giving to people who follow you?
Yeah, so I focus on Instagram strategy, and I help clients who are either looking to build their own influence on Instagram and monetize that, or sell as a small business or there's some sort of service provider. And my ultimate niche is actually solopreneurs. So those are people like me who are working in teams of 1 to 3 or 4 people, but they are pretty much the face and the brain, and 90% of the power behind their business. And that was important to me for a reason. One, solopreneurs tend to also have, they can relate to me as to like where I'm at the moment in my business.
Mm-hmm.
So when they actually get to my page, what they're seeing and what they're learning is how to use Instagram themselves to create a following, and start to monetize it. So you actually don't need to fully hire me to do it for you. If you really just put together all of everything that I've ever written on this page, you have a really solid foundation for doing so. So that's really how I use my Instagram altogether.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. So I like what you mentioned about gaining trust of your followers. Like,
Yeah.
what do you foresee doing with, in the future, near future with your Instagram? Like, do you have plans on, like, how would you monetize it? And are you going to do an e-course or like,
Yeah.
what's that going to look like for you?
That's a good question. I've been very grateful to start getting tons of opportunities as a nano influencer. And those are influencers who are under 10K, so between 1,000 and 10,000 followers. And my goal is to ultimately continue building my following, continue offering just strategy and coaching for others who also want to get started in Instagram, and gain clientele that way, and ultimately start to really monetize. Just my creating content for other businesses by being an influencer for them. So I'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, all right, this is a goal and it's on my vision board and this is where I want to go. But really only God will get me there. So, but that's really ultimately what I'm working towards.
And let me ask you this as well. Like, where it seems like so much you have so much knowledge and background on Instagram. How did you gain that? Like, what do you take a class? Do a lot of
Oh
reading?
yeah,
Like,
I
where do
did
you
all
learn?
the things.
You did it all.
And I think that that's like, I don't know. I feel like for people like me, that's a good place to start, right? Because I don't know, I'm one of those people that like, I have to know. So I'm just gonna, you start Googling and you fall down the rabbit hole and just,
Mhm.
you end up in a different place than when you started. But yeah, I took classes, I took Udemy courses. There are a whole bunch of others, just social media strategists and Instagram strategists on Instagram. I went to them and I learned from their successes and their failures, and I watched their videos. And you really start to kind of funnel for yourself what will work in
Mhm.
your own business and with your own brand. And I think that that's important as well. Like you can get all the content like in the world, and try to kind of build yourself up from the ground, but it's really when you funnel it and really just kind of like take what you know you need and can apply to your own business,
Mhm.
that's when it really starts to grow and kind of take a life of its own.
Yeah, so let me ask you, for anyone who has a business or maybe wants to become a future influencer, I want you to give us some tips to grow your Instagram. So let's start with the photos. What would you suggest as far as like what type of photos people should be posting on their Instagram, like, especially if they have a business account?
Yeah. So it's funny because there's a lot of controversy around like whether or not people want a curated feed versus people just want value. I think that it's really up to the person. But I think when it comes to photos, you will definitely want to have like clear photos, well taken, professional, or even like with a really good camera. The thing is, Instagram is a community platform. People kind of want to see your life and they want to see, and we express a lot about ourselves through photo. So you definitely want to have photos that capture people's attention. They say things about you. You don't want to just keep like you don't want to just post selfies, but you want to give your photos a life of their own. Because before anybody reads a caption, they see a photo. And I think that if you're focusing your Instagram in that direction and just really trying to capture the attention of your audience by showing them an authentic view of who you are, then you have really, really good like you have a great aesthetic just with that.
It's funny you said that because I think I remember hearing in the past maybe a week or two about, oftentimes people will have the photos and then the photos will tell a story in the captions. But then just recently I heard like, well, now you don't always have to do that. So, it seems like you'll hear one thing and then there's another thing. So it's kind of like, I guess, maybe pick and choose elements of what you're hearing or
Yeah.
something. Because I can see it both ways. Like, I actually appreciate stories, but for every person that appreciates a story for a photo, there's probably somebody who's like, I just need it to be shorter. I guess
Oh
you can't
yeah.
please everyone. You know
And
what
like
I'm saying?
honestly, there are ways to tell. Like your audience will always tell you. If your goal is to grow your Instagram, um, you're gonna constantly want to be just kind of molding and changing that strategy because you're gonna start to notice what's not working, right? So I think I have great photos and I'm getting likes, but I'm getting absolutely no comments, which means people probably aren't reading my caption. So then you change how you're writing them because you're like, okay, so what I was doing before doesn't work now. So ultimately, yeah, everybody has their like own opinions, but you're ultimately going to do what's best according to how your audience receives it.
Yeah, and when you said that, it made me think of engagement. Like, do you think it's important to always like leave a question at the end of your caption in order to get that engagement component, or people should just appreciate the photos for what they are, and you could still, people will engage that way. I mean, how important do you think engagement is when
Yeah,
growing your Instagram?
that's a really good question. So it's funny because likes are actually going away in the United States. So by the end of the year, no one in the United States will be able to see how many likes a photo gets on them.
Mm,
And that's something that's already been launched in Canada, and in different, like in different countries around the world, and they're living life without likes right now. So it's funny that you would ask that question because now engagement is ultimately, are people commenting? Are people engaging with your content? Do they feel like they're talking to you? Are you answering them back? Are you using it as a community oriented platform? Um, so yeah, I think that we are going in a direction where that's more important, especially as likes are being phased out.
yeah, and then my last question for as far as tips goes for the people who are planning on growing their Instagram has to do with consistency. Like, what
Yeah.
suggestions would you give for someone, especially someone like me who is not the best at being consistent with Instagram?
Yeah, so I am definitely not the best with being consistent with Instagram either. Okay, I definitely feel it sometimes. Life gets in the way, and again, like I'm a solopreneur, so I'm doing a lot of the things at once. But it's also one of those things where I am one of those like like the right direction to go in, but I understand that time can get in the way. But when it comes to consistency, I really think ultimately it's not posting as often as you can. It's posting on a regular basis, showing up to the
Mhm.
platform regularly and giving it good content, good value. That's ultimately what builds a brand. I actually don't post every day. I don't post more than once a day, and most of the time I'm showing up via Instagram stories.
Mhm.
I recently started committing to posting every other day.
Mhm.
Um, and in between that, I'm on Instagram stories and I'm pretty much just showing people my life. That is actually consistency. So using some part of the platform in some way every day ultimately shows the app that like you're here, you're building community, you're showing up, even if it's not posting a picture every day, if that makes sense.
No, it makes
So there are
perfect.
tons of different ways to use the platform.
Yeah, I mean, just when you're looking through Instagram, you can see just the whole gamut of how people use it. You can see everything from medical professionals to real estate attorneys, merchants. So it's can be used in various ways, especially when you have a business account. You see a lot of the other businesses, at least on my
Yeah.
end. So that's
Oh
the
yeah.
portion that I'm like, I tend to gravitate, even though I said I'm not as consistent with my business
Yeah.
account, I'm always on my personal account because, I feel like that's more of the quote unquote real world. I can see my
Yeah, no.
friends, celebrities, blah, blah, blah. The business world account is kind of like, I'm seeing other businesses and it's cool and all, but it's just something to consider, when you're growing your Instagram or starting your business Instagram. It's definitely curated towards, like, I don't know how the analytics and stuff works. I don't get all that, but I definitely notice like business accounts usually have more business oriented,
Yeah.
followers, people, whatever. And your personal account is more of your friends and
Oh
celebrities,
yes,
etc. Yeah.
definitely.
So let me ask you, let's see. Oh yeah. So what does the future hold for you? Like, how do you plan on growing your business, your brand? Where do you foresee yourself in the next, 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, so my ultimate goal actually is to leave my full-time work. I'm still in higher education currently. But last year I was actually able to match my income working full-time with my business. So my goal this year is to try and surpass that and see if I'm actually fiscally ready to just leave working full-time behind and taking my entrepreneurship full-time. So that's really my goal within the next year, honestly. It might be a little sooner than that because I'm going a little crazy. But but yeah, that's ultimately my goal. And my hope is to at some point just transition from doing done for you services to being more of a brand strategist and an influencer, and making a majority of my income from that.
All right. So wrapping things up, where can we find you? And tell us where the name of that beautiful Instagram page of yours.
So you can find me on every platform, Facebook, Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but that is not business related. At tamekabazile.co. So that's my name, tamekabazile.co. You can also visit my website at www.tamekabazile.co as well.
Alrighty, so thank you so much for being a guest on Teacher Says podcast, and definitely, I cannot encourage the audience enough to check out your Instagram feed. It is absolutely phenomenally beautiful. I told you, wasn't Tameka amazing? Like simply amazing. All right, so we're gonna wind down the Teacher Says podcast, but I just want to challenge you in the next week to go out there. Well, actually, don't go out there. We're supposed to be practicing social distancing, so now stay put. But at least, I'm going to put this up on my Instagram. I found a infographic that perfectly describes how I feel in regards to social distancing, like just things you can do and things you shouldn't do. For example, like every day since we've been in this coronavirus, craze, whatever, I still go out and walk. And I know on my mentions in Facebook, there was someone posted, I can't believe people are outside. I'm like, well, yeah, until I'm told specifically, like, don't ever go outside, don't step outside, I'm still gonna go outside and walk. I don't live in the city, I live in the suburbs. Not to say, whatever, but when I'm walking on a typical day, there's no one all breathing down my throat. There's distance. So until I'm told otherwise, I think taking a walk around your neighborhood is fine. And the infographic that I'm sharing on my Instagram page is saying that, like, go outside, walk around, Even this week, I'm decluttering, in addition to homeschooling my kids, which I'm feeling weird about. But, decluttering, I intend on dropping my clutter off in the Goodwill bin. I'm still going about my life somewhat, just modify it. Like, I'm not going to the mall. I couldn't go to the mall anyway. The mall's here shut down. So, I don't want people to feel like you just can't go outside. Like, it's, you're going to get hit upside the head by corona if you go outside. Now, I think going outside in your backyard, walking around your neighborhood, I believe that's fine, but I'm not a medical doctor, so don't take my advice. I'm just doing me, and I think that's okay. So just keep that in mind. Turn off the TV. Because, a lot of people I know, especially people who are retired, they watch news all day and then they'll post things on Facebook or wherever trying to scare you. And I'm like, what? So, I mentioned before, I'm a huge NPR news person because I just like the fact that NPR is very generic in the fact that they just tell you what's going on. In my opinion, it doesn't come off as fear-mongering or, like, we're all going to die. No, it's just very basic, and I appreciate that. So, yeah, so keep that in mind. So, once again, we're going to wrap things up. Please make sure you go out there and you rate, review my podcast. I would appreciate it so I can be found on iTunes or podcast thing. I don't know. But I just want to be found. Like I said before, the next 2 weeks are a blessing because it's giving me time to work on the podcast and really get everything better. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely intend to be more active on my social media to an extent. I've said before, I don't want to be too active because I don't like the feeling of being addicted to my phone. I like to live life. So, yeah, keep that in mind. I would love to hear that you're out there, so definitely leave your mark on my social media. You can see it in the show notes. I'm pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm going to post some things the next 2 weeks like I did my shopping adventure on my Instagram page. And that's that. So, have an awesome week and expect to hear a lot of me lately. Bye-bye.